kill a person, she said. Her back was still towards me at the sink. She was being ridiculous. It was a freaking camping trip, not some drug-filled hiatus for weeks. I asked for 2 nights away with friends, and she refused. I hated her. You're insane. You don't think I should be mad at you? You're the only parent not letting her kid go. You have no good reason, I screamed as I threw down my fork. It hit the side of my plate with such force that the plate rocked. The noise prompted her to turn around. She looked almost as angry as me, but said nothing. She walked over to the table where I was sitting and removed my fork and plate without saying a word. I noticed she walked back to the sink with a slight limp. Normally I would ask her about the cause of her pain, but I didn't care anymore. We'd been fighting for days. It was just a camping trip, and Steve's parents were letting him go. His parents were great. His mom even made t-shirts with Steve's picture on them for games, so everyone knew whose kid on the field was theirs. Steve acted embarrassed, but he was always smiling when he'd point them out to us from the bench. You don't point to people who embarrass you. My mom was a freak. I don't remember her ever coming to the school, even for parent-teacher conferences. She'd never been to one of my games. She barely came to the school. She'd park off on a side street to pick me up, but it was weird. Her feet, shoulder width apart, and her arms just hanging at her side. She would just stand there and stare, and people noticed. When I was a kid, I would eagerly search for her. I was unaware of the talk back then. I didn't see other parents pointing at her, and I certainly didn't hear the gossip. When I got older, things changed. I could hear what people were saying about her. Some of the stories were incredible, and for a while, they were almost funny. They ranged from, she was just odd and maybe mentally ill, to the idea that she was a witch, like an actual witch with a pointy hat kind of thing. My favorite was that she was in witness protection. I wish. At least we'd have something interesting about us. The truth was, she was never the same after my dad died. I was really young then, so I just remember bits and pieces, but he got sick, like really sick, and died within a couple of days. The weird part is that I don't remember my mom grieving at the time. I remember rage. I don't know what my dad did, but my mom was so angry with him. The first day he was sick, he could barely walk. He said the pain in his legs was incredible. He'd also had a terrible headache. I remember her sitting in the rocking chair, smiling at him as he suffered. "You have to stop," Dad pleaded from the couch. "My God, Althea, you are killing me." "Daddy, let me cover you," I said as I placed a blanket on top of him. My dad smiled at me and touched my face, just as another wave of pain overtook him. "Tell your mom I'm sorry," he said to me when she was in the kitchen. The tears rolled down his face. I ran to my mother and asked her for help. "Mama, can you please help Daddy?" I cried and begged as I held onto her skirt. "Please, help my daddy." I was just a little kid, but I knew it was serious. He died the next day. I was devastated. A couple of days after he died, I remember sitting at the dinner table with tears rolling down my face. The pain of his loss was almost not survivable. "Your father could have saved himself," she said. Her words split the silence at the table. "He just had to apologize, and he would have been fine." "What?" I stammered. I was so confused by her words. "I want you to know that. It's important you know that a choice was made," she said. Then I remembered what my father had said to me when I put the blanket on him. I'd forgotten to tell her what he said. He was sorry. He told me to tell you he was sorry," I said quietly. She turned pale. "Then I guess we both know whose fault this is," she said with an accusatory tone. "We won't speak of this again. It's enough that we know." She almost spit out those last words. I asked her about that evening over the years to come, and she would only tell me that anger could kill a person. She was a lunatic. And I'd had enough of it. I looked over at her again as she washed my plate at the sink. She was hunched over, so whatever was causing her pain was obviously really getting to her now. Good. The chair scraped against the floor when I stood up so quickly. I stormed out of the kitchen and into my room, locking the door behind me. I put on my headphones and turned up the volume as loud as I could stand it. I danced around the room. 17 years of living with her and her craziness were bottled up inside me, and I was letting it all out. I just jumped around as if I were the guitarist of the band. I danced and screamed the lyrics. Then I started tearing apart my room, the bed, the books. Everything went flying as I raged. "How do you like that?" I screamed, not even caring if she could hear me. I could hear muffled banging on my door. She could bang until her hands bled. I was not opening my door. Instead, I punched a hole in the wall. My knuckles were bleeding, but I felt no pain, just fury. She kept banging. I think I even heard yelling. That was a first. She never yelled. Good. It meant I was getting to her. She slid a piece of paper under my door. Seriously? Were we passing notes now? She's ridiculous. I ignored it. It was only 15 minutes or so when I turned on the music and looked around the room. Now that my anger had been released, I felt a calm overtake me. I surveyed the room, and to my dismay, I realized that I had been destroying my own stuff to get back at her. I remade the bed, then picked up my books and other belongings. With the music off, she'd stopped knocking too. I knew I'd have to apologize once I finished cleaning up the room and I locked the door. I was ready to talk. I wanted her to know that we would have to renegotiate our lives together. I'd be a legal adult soon, so I wouldn't even have to live here. Did she really want me to go? Because she sure was pushing me out the door. And if I did go, there'd be no reason to ever come back. I picked up the note she slid under the door without reading it and rolled my eyes. I opened the door, and then I saw her. My mom was lying on the floor, collapsed in the doorway. Her mouth was slack, and her eyes were just staring off in the distance. "Mom?" I said, imploring an answer. I just stood there in disbelief. I didn't touch her. I couldn't touch her. I think I was in shock, really. I briefly thought about doing CPR, but I didn't know how to. And if I'm being completely honest, maybe I didn't want to offer her a chance at survival. I know how terrible that sounds. Truthfully, I am ashamed of how that sounds. But if this is about telling the truth, I need to tell it all. I stepped over her, careful not to step on any part of her, including her clothing. I could feel myself shaking as I went to the phone to call 911. Before picking the phone, I looked at the note she'd slipped under my door, still in my hand. This folded sheet of paper was the last communication between myself and my mother. My father's last words were an apology to my mother. For what? I don't know. What would her last words be for me? I opened the paper, and as I read the 2 words she'd scrawled across the page, I felt nothing. "I'm sorry," was all it said.